Hey guys, Infinity time today. We're going to look at a bat rep between Morats and Aleph, and the mission is going to be Com Center, the new Com Center in the 2017 pack. Special video because going to be featuring the first time that I'm running the heavy infantry Suryat link in Morats, and I want to talk a little bit about the list, and we'll go through it together before we get into the battle report. So, as you guys recall, single battle group, single combat group lists are becoming a little bit more interesting to play and a bit more popular now because the person going second can't use the strategic use of the command token to reduce the order pool by 2, which kind of cripples you if you're trying to make any kind of alpha strike, and that's sort of what you have to do to do well with those lists a lot of the time. But now that that can't be done, 10 order list makes it a bit easier to send a heavy infantry link on a bit of a Rambo rampage. The only thing that Morats do better than other factions when it comes to that is that they've got somebody in the heavy infantry link who is Strategos level 1. So you take Kornak, the lieutenant, and it's so befitting that he's actually the leader of the link. Then you obviously need a specialist in this. You've got to take the rack to rack. I like the Vulcan shotgun just because the other two loadouts are going to be handled by other members of the team, whereas the Vulcan shotgun is the cheapest, which is quite important, keeping the overall costs down of a heavy infantry link, but also a Vulcan shotgun can be pretty powerful, and nothing else is really going to have a shotgun in this link. Then when you go to the rest of the Suryats, you can take 3 more of them, so of course you want the HMG. It's far better to take the one with the 10 bot because one of the weaknesses of playing a heavy infantry link that's going to be, rampaging across the battlefield, period, is hacking, which is always going to ruin your day. One unique thing about this group of Morats is that they have a lot of BTS. So with Fairy Dust from a hacker, a Deflect level 1 10 bot, and tons of BTS, it could actually be quite difficult for your opponent to hack you. So with the HMG in there, you've got that, but of course you're going to want the HMG because there's so many range bands where the HMG is just, Ballistic Skill 16, 5 dice, and there's no other gun that could do better than that. Heavy Rocket Launcher, though, goes in the link too because sometimes you're going to be wrong with the link, and the Heavy Rocket Launcher is better than the HMG is when you are defending, but it also gives you extra tool when you're running across the battlefield and just going for an all-or-nothing, all-in push. You'll find some angles where you can clip multiple models with the template. So you bring out the heavy rocket launcher instead of the HMG because it will be more efficient in that very specific scenario. And to round off the link team, I personally like to throw in the multi-rifle guy because nothing else in this link team has shock. And shock is now very, very good in that you're basically reducing a 3-wound Asura or Anathematic or Coronta down to 2 wounds because of the way that the errata came out. But also, when you're trying to clear out your Gaziantep and Guangxi, the multi-rifle is actually better for doing that than the HMG is because you're doing double the amount of damage effectively. Not only that, but the multi-rifle is the only thing which has armor piercing in that little lineup. And in Aero has double action shots, and even stun can be useful sometimes. Gives you another little light flamer there. So looking at this little link team, and we're just going to zoom in the page a little bit, I think that this is actually a really cool link team because it covers all of the range bands really well. For the 0 to 8, you've got the Vulcan shotgun or the multi-rifle. For the 8 to 16, you've got Kornak's Mark 12. And if he's shooting anything in that range out of cover, he's hitting on 20s with 4 dice. Amazing stuff. Beyond 16 to 32, it's the HMG every time. And then beyond that, well, hey, you're walking across the battlefield, you're going to be trying to do that damage. So what else do we put into the list? So we've only spent 188 points, but we're going to go for a 10 order list. I like to put Bit and Kiss in there. Now, Bit and Kiss gives you specialist presence. It gives you kind of an interesting way of defending yourself against some models. But it's just so cost efficient, this particular profile. I cannot believe that Combined Army have got such a good profile in this. It's so good at hacking enemy hackers with the BTS 6 to defend itself. Got Maestro, which is amazing. You've got a Pitcher, which is brilliant. Adhesive Launcher crops up sometimes. You can use Kiss as the repeater without risking Bit in some circumstances. And the submachine gun is often better than a combi rifle. and you've got mine layer. So you've got an additional mine just sitting there in your deployment zone. I cannot believe you get a lap for 19 points. So that's a great loadout to take in any list. Dr. Worm, just for the ability to complete classifieds. It's very fast specialist, good willpower, and you have that opportunity to revive one of your Surjats if you don't get the first turn and you need to actually bring the link back together. So that's a great one to go for. In 10 order heavy infantry lists, I like to take an HMG Q drone just because it helps you to defend against, attacks coming around to take out your cheerleaders. So if you just got them right at the back, just covering a couple of side lanes, you can stop drop troopers coming in and little people sneaking around and just beating you in the active turn. Plus, the Q drone can sometimes be a fallback if the link's not doing very well or if it's out of position. And then, of course, you're going to take a Morat hacker. He's a bit overcosted, but this guy is so important in this list because Fairy Dust gives your entire link team that firewall, and if you accidentally walk into an assault hacker, you'll be glad you had that. Speaking of which, against the assault hacker, well, you're immune to the effects of isolation, so they're not going to oblivion you. It's only if they try to hit you with a gotcha or a carbonite, and that only works against the 3 Suryats, not against Kornak or the Raktarak, right? And if they try to hit you with a carbonite, well, Suryat's a ballistic skill, BTS 6, +3 for the firewall, and the enemy's -3 for the firewall, and another -3 for the 10 bot. So with this hacker in there, it's amazing. But the hacker can also put assisted fire in the Q drone, so you've got that as well. The only other model that I really like in this setup, and there's a couple of options. You can take a Krakot, but I actually like the Z-Rat. Just because the Z-Rat is going to just hang around, maybe plant some mines, and if it's a mission which requires a lot of button pressing, it gives you a model which is going to stay in position. It's really not the best model because it doesn't have marker state, so it's weak because of that. But at least you've got a forward observer in the list as well. And that's my 300-point 6th SWC Morat list. So let's see how it does against the Aleph, then we'll run through the bat rep. So, new terrain now. I've actually picked up a brand new battle mat. I'm addicted to these mats, and it's a desert theme mat, and my opponent's put some of his terrain down on top of it. We've also got a couple of bits and pieces from the club terrain going on there as well. So, obviously, you've got the deployment zones here and here, and the 9 consoles. Now, this scenario is a pretty good one. One way to win is to get more consoles by the end of the game, and you get 4 objective points. So that can be a real winner, and it's really good to go second if that is your strategy. The other way to win is to kill their designated target with your data tracker, which nets you a total of 3 points, and then kill more specialists than them, which gives you 5. So if you've done that, and they haven't done that, but they've got the consoles, well, you'll win, provided that you both get your classifieds or neither of you get your classifieds. So there's 2 paths to victory. Reliably, getting the consoles and maybe killing their data, killing their whatchamacallit, and at least getting a classified is a sure way to win. But in some circumstances, you can win without being the player who gets more consoles, and I really like that. So I've won the roll for first turn, and I've decided to take first turn because I want to try the Morat link. I want to see if 11 orders is enough to do a lot of damage with this link, and I'm really looking forward to it. Sadly, sometimes these games turn out to be either one-sided in the favor of the player who's doing the Rambo Rush, Alpha Strike, or one-sided in favor of the person who just shuts it down and just swamps you and mobs you in the middle of the table. But we'll see. So here's Kornak and his squad. Multi-rifle at the back, rack-to-rack Vulcan shotgun, HMG at the front, HRL next to him, and Kornak in the middle, and this guy here is the tin bot. There's our designated target here, which we're going to try and keep safe, and the Morat Vanguard hacker or prone on top of the building. You can sort of see a bit of a zoom out there. So here we've got Bit and Kiss represented by these models here. I've got my Z-Rat up against prone behind one of these consoles, and of course the link team, which we just talked about there in the middle. On the right-hand flank, you can see I've got Dr. Worm hanging out next to the Q-drone, which has got a little bit of an angle past that building, but I can reposition him. Bear in mind, we're going first. Okay, so opponent has a post-human engineer here and a sensor bot behind the building. Note that there is actually a roof over this, so the sensor bot can use climbing plus to go on top of the roof if it wants to. Towards the center, we've got a Feuerbach here who is just pulled back a little bit from the wall and prone, so can't really see along these angles at this point. But there is a bit of elevation on this side of the table where if you go on top of that, you'll be able to see the Feuerbach. Interestingly, though, there is not 1, but 2 Asuras. So that's quite a big deal. It's like taking 2 tags in your list. Asuras are worth like 70 points. So we have the Spitfire Asura and the Hacking Device plus Asura. My opponent wants to just bank them in the room there. And yeah, going to take both of the heavies. So here they are. Here's a bit of a better picture, and they've got a helper bot nearby, just in case something goes wrong, I suppose. On his right-hand flank, he's trying to land some net rods here, but they get scattered off the table. One of them does land closer over here towards my deployment zone. There it is there. He's got a flash pulse bot, a helper bot. The model he always takes the command, chain of command Myrmidon officer, and his designated target, which I'm going to have to try to destroy with my data tracker. And my data tracker is an HMG Suryat. So Morat and the team charge out of the deployment zone, stomping along the terrain. You can see them, look at them go. And the first point of order is to blast this guy. So moving the HMG up on top of the crate. No cover for me, but he's got cover. So it's 15s to hit on 1 dice for him, 16s to hit on 5 dice for me. The first face-to-face roll doesn't kill the Feuerbuck, which is annoying because I've lost an order by doing that. The second one does kill him, so already slowed down a little bit. We're behind schedule. So then you can see, okay, this is a bit of a view of the crossfire here, so you can sort of see what's going on that cross view of the photo. But next up, Kornak moves around here and uses his Mark 12 to destroy the Imatron, which was right here. Note that the plan is to go inside the room, destroy the post-human SMG, and start getting these guys into close combat. And if I can sort of cripple that hub, he's got very little left in the list which can contend with AROs at that point. We're also going to leave the HRL outside the building, so he's sort of just camping in the parking lot. He's got his rocket launcher, he's got +3 blitz skill and an extra burst, and he's a heavy infantry to start with, so that's hopefully going to be really good. Before we do that, though, we send the HMG on another mission up this crate as well. He's already been up this crate over here, and the point is to try and destroy the designated target. So, when you're an HMG, hitting on 16s with 5 dice, and the designated target is just going to dodge on some relatively average number, you'd expect to do some damage here. Infuriatingly, and this is what sort of puts a spanner in the works this game, he passes an armor save, goes and dodges back behind a building, or guts back around the building, and we're treating the designated target as a model here that can fail a guts check. Correct me if that's actually wrong, but this means that during this turn I cannot actually net the 3 points which I plan to net by killing the designated target. So we're going to have to actually win the game on attrition now, which means that I'm in a bit of trouble. So given that's the case, and given that there's a hacker in that building, this Morat here in the foreground brings up fairy dust because that Asura is going to start hacking me once I bring my multi-rifle within range. So there's the heavy rocket launcher camped at the car park. The HMG is just moving a little bit closer to this objective here, and we're moving in. So Kornak is going towards the door, the Vulcan shotgun moving in, and the multi-rifle moving in as well. So he's trying to immobilize the multi-rifle with his hacking AROs, but not succeeding because I've got massive BTS and big reductions to his rolls. I also want to point out that we're using a house rule for this particular game with doors, where you are allowed to move through doors freely, but you treat them in the same way that models that do not have multi-terrain do when they hit forests. So if you hit a forest, you automatically stop if you're partway through a short skill, and if you're continuing to move through it, you're using your second movement value. So my opponent suggested that as a way of playing doors. We tested it for this game. I don't particularly like it, but he did seem to like it. Anyway, doors just in the way a little bit here, but what ends up happening is they bust the door down, and the multi-rifle guy blasts the SMG guy in the face. Not before he shoots his nanopulsar, though. Now, BTS 6 on the multi-rifle, BTS 9 on Kornak, no problems. But the rack-to-rack in the background, BTS something like 3, fails the BTS check. So the Link team already down to 4 members. So a bit of an oversight there, forgetting that he had a nanopulsar to use. But we're wiping out the post-human, and we're now going to move on to the Asura. So you can see the positioning here. The nanopulsar moves through on this angle, right? We've got the HMG and the HRL camped outside of the building. No successful hacks yet. And then there's Kornak on the side and the multi-rifle guy here. Now what I can do is I can move around the corner with the multi-rifle and start shooting at the Asura. Now, I've only got to get through 2 wounds, but I'm very low on orders at this point because I've suffered some setbacks. So I'm thinking maybe what's better than that is for me to move Kornak around into close combat, because if I don't succeed in taking her out, well, Kornak's going to block the second Asura from getting through, and Kornak's better than the Asura in close combat anyway. So that's where we get to. At this point, he starts passing some of the hacking rolls, and I start failing some of the BTS checks. So some of my models are becoming immobilized here, namely the multi-rifle guy and the heavy what's-his-face, the heavy machine gun. After a couple of rounds of combat and shooting, though, Kornak does cleave the Asura in twain, not using Berserk, mind you, just relying on the straight-up stat of Blitz of Close Combat 22 and the double-action Close Combat weapon, but he's now -1 Asura, and he's going to have to beat off the Link team with just a combi rifle. So, what he decides to do in this turn is to move out with his champ here, the Myrmidon officer, and to not engage with the Asura just yet. Failing a smoke grenade though, so wasting a few orders getting in base contact with the objective, but successfully capturing it after that. Back to the Asura. So she opens up at Kornak, firing her combi rifle and inflicting a single wound. We also realize that there is a hidden deployment posthuman here who decided not to reveal during my active turn because he didn't want to get hit by a multi-rifle or taken out in close combat straight away. But we do know now that there is a hidden deployment model right in their midst. Interesting. After surviving 1 volley of combi rifle hits, Kornak wins the face-to-face roll with Asura and engages her. So now she's got to beat him off in close combat, so the plot thickens. Also, every time she activates, all of the heavy infantry that are immobilized in her range there, and immobilized level 1, technically get a reset, because she's a hacker. They get to choose reset as a response to there being a hacker in their zone of control. So they do start resetting themselves. So that gets interesting. Then, our posthuman assault hacker appears here and uses his boarding shotgun to fire at the guy with the multi-rifle and the guy with the HMG. Now, this works out quite well for the surprise attack. Even though I ignore it with 6 as level 2. So, failing 2 armor saves annoyingly with the multi-rifle goes down. HMG, though, takes a single wound and guts back into cover by passing the religious check. But he's basically out of orders at this point. So, when the dust settles, you've got a 3-man Link team at this point. Kornak's badly injured, but he's in close combat. And he's the lieutenant and manages to survive. So, amazing. So I come up with a plan here. Rather than activating the Link team, which is surrounded by, Aleph forces, what we're going to do here, because I'm actually on 9 orders at this point, having had Kornak survive, Bit and Kiss now move out and they start making their long, order-intensive trek across the battlefield, because once they get further out into the field, they can then fire a pitcher from here to here in range of that assault hacker. Now, when that happens successfully, I can start declaring killer hacking attacks against the assault hacker, which will free up the Link team to move in. Now, a rules question came up here, and I kind of got blindsided by this. Maestro doesn't inflict wounds, apparently. It renders a model unconscious. So if you succeed and they fail their BTS check, they become unconscious. The implications of this is that if you are using it on a model with 2 wounds, like a Swiss Guard assault hacker, and you force it to fail just a single BTS save with Maestro, it loses 2 wounds straight away and goes into unconscious state. But if you use it on a model with Dog Order NWI, apparently that rule replaces the unconscious state. So no matter how many times you put it into unconscious, it retains that rule. And apparently, because we're not reducing wounds from the profile, well, the clause where it says if you're an NWI and you take a further wound, you're removed from the table, apparently that doesn't kick in. So if you have NWI and you're being hit by Maestro, you can fail an infinite number of BTS checks and you stay on the table. At least that's my opponent's interpretation of that rule. If you would like to comment on your interpretation, please do so in the comments. But the argument is that NWI says it replaces unconscious, and the rules for Maestro says it just causes the unconscious state. Therefore, it perpetually causes NWI. So, being blindsided by that, I win the first face-to-face roll, put him into NWI, and then I start switching to Skullbuster, and he starts winning the face-to-face rolls, and I get isolated. And this happens not only to Bit and Kiss, but also to my Morat Vanguard hacker as well, which was extremely annoying. Luckily, though, if he wants to do anything with his hacker from now on, he's gonna get hit by like Skullbuster or a Red Rum in the future. And in the process of doing this, I have captured this console and this console with Dr. Worm, who's moved up around here. I've also moved my Q drone over to here just to protect the battlefield a bit more, cut off this line here where his Myrmidon officer might be moving. So I've got 2 objectives, he's got 1, and he's got 2 turns left, I've got 1 turn left, but I like my position at this point. There's a lot of restricting going on for him. What he decides to do, though, is he decides in his turn, he's going to ignore the central scenario for now and just slowly crawl around the side with his Myrmidon. He has to crawl because there's a Q drone and a Morat heavy rocket launcher overlooking his position, and comes around the side of the building here to where his designated target has hidden. And he's going to start cautious moving around here until he can get to a point where he can hit the Zerat boarding shotgun in the back. The Zerat has repositioned as well, as you guys can see. So with a cautious move behind this obstacle, he's avoided the HRL in the background, and the Zerat has a line of facing along there, so he's able to come in through the back. Doing so, the Zerat passes its armor save and turns to face the officer, who decides to go and hold right now while we go back to the assault hacker, who decides to go for a last laugh and boarding shotgun the HMG guy again, and in the process of doing that does no wounds to the HMG and gets hacked by everybody and is destroyed this time by a Red Rum and a Brain Blast. So there you go. Back to the fight though, Myrmidon officer charges in and cuts down the Zerat with his sword as everybody predicted that he would. Game state time. So over in this corner of the table, there is a victorious Myrmidon officer, and I've just drawn the arrow to show that. We've got the Morat over here who's sort of waiting for his chance, but I think he's standing up at this point. I've now moved my Q drone up the field a bit, and I've moved the Dr. Worm up the field a bit. I'm basically coordinating in order here, although I can't coordinate with Bit and Kiss because they're synchronized, right? So just getting a position for my last turn to secure as many objectives as I can and try and take out a few specialists because that's going to matter. Dr. Worm doing a great job moving up the field, capturing this one and this one, but fails to get this one. Bit and Kiss also probably going to be able to do something as well. In the middle of the table, we don't really want to do too much, so the Q drone moving over here, just getting to a position where he can actually shoot on either side of this, which is going to force the Myrmidon officer to try and spend orders removing him before he can go press the button. I don't really want him to convert one of my pressed consoles over to his side. At the moment I'm leading like 3-1 on consoles, but he could easily bring that back. Elsewhere, Bit and Kiss move forward. They throw a repeater here because this repeater wasn't in range of the Asura, which is in this corner. So the new repeater being thrown down does put me in range, and that's going to mean that if he does anything with his Asura, he's going to get hacked by Red Rum and a Brain Blast in his final turn. I've also got the link team going on over here, but I decided to cut the link team off again and just activate Kornak to try and whack her in close combat, but that didn't succeed, unfortunately. Alright, so end of my turn. I've really only managed to get this one, and if I take the face out of the way, this one and this one. So I've got 4 objectives to his 1. If he takes 2 of mine back, so if he goes and actually picks this one off and picks this one off, and he's still got this one over here, he'd have 3 objectives over here, so 1, 2, 3, to my 2. So he could actually win the game by getting that back. I've killed 2 specialists, and he's killed 1, because he's got the Raktarak, whereas I've got who have I picked off? I think I've got one of the posthumans. I honestly can't remember. Oh, no, I think that happens a little bit later. Let's continue with the bat rep. So he's killed my Zerat now, and he's killed my Raktarak. So he's killed 2 specialists. I honestly, for the life, I've killed a posthuman SMG, and there's, I think, one other model that I managed to destroy at some point, but he can easily take the lead on specialists if he wants to. So what we've got here is we've got his Myrmidon trying to throw speculative smoke here and failing. So now he's going to have a go with the combi rifle. Combi rifle is going to mean he's going to be hitting on something like 10s. I can't remember what his ballistic skill is, but the Q drone is going to be hitting on 2s with 4 dice. So we're going to have a bit of a shootout here, and if he can succeed in that, he'll have 3 orders left to move over and try and capture the consoles. In the meantime, what happens is he decides to step out with his engineer and shoot at Dr. Worm, killing Dr. Worm, which nets him another specialist, but the Q drone in the distance, and I think it might have even been the heavy rocket launcher, firing back and destroying his model. So that's sort of what happens there. Yeah. So with his Myrmidon officer able to shoot at the Q drone, also taking fire from the Morat with combi rifle, and what happens here is he gets hit by a critical hit and destroyed by the Q drone, which basically seals the game there. But we were talking about what would have happened if he'd, with 3 orders left, been able to get to my console. There is a console right here. So he spends 1 order moving over here and destroying and capturing this thing. And then he spends the second order going over to here, and he's got a last order to short skill and press the button. But the thing is, he can't jump with a long skill. Jump would only move him 4 inches. He doesn't have super jump. So I argued that even had he managed to beat the Q drone at that point, he'd have had not enough orders to actually get enough consoles, and I would have won there. So what sealed it was the Myrmidon officer not killing the Q drone with the very first order. He attempts with the first time and doesn't succeed. I think takes a wound or something like that. Or he could have funneled all of his orders into that and not bothered to do anything with the what do you call that guy? The post-human engineer. Either way, though, actually turned out to be quite a fun game because it was less of a game to do with the single initial Rambo rush, which was quite fun and effective, but there was a lot else that happened in the game, and that's usually how Infinity games go. I thought my opponent's list was handicapped by the fact that he had 2 Assuras, which makes things really redundant, but I still think that the Kornak Link Team list is actually really cool. It's a very versatile link, can pack a lot of punch. I got unlucky being slowed down by not killing his designated target and being slowed down by the doors and things like that, and not managing to kill a Feuerbach in a single round. But I'd be happy to play more of this list. It's quite hard to remove them if they spend like 8 orders shooting things and moving things, and then another 2 or 3 orders just re-entrenching themselves somewhere in a point where they've killed everything, and your opponent may be running out of tools to deal with them. They also have a bit of close combat defense in the form of Kornak's Berserk, and they're a real toolkit, so they're really awesome. I love the new models. They're not really new anymore, but they're specific models for the heavy rocket launcher and the multi-rifle, and I think there's one more guy that I haven't really painted yet, but he looks like this. He's holding his sword, and he's got his multi-rifle there. You can sort of see very roughly sort of the model I'm holding up, so I'll paint him soon. And, of course, I've got this guy, the new avatar, which is on my painting desk right now, so we'll play a little bit of him as well. For now, guys, hope you enjoyed this one. It was a win for the Morats, and we'll see you again next time.